Hi, everybody. This is Caroline Fernandez on the Commandeer Press Facebook page. I'm here with Shannon O'Toole, illustrator extraordinaire, and we are here to do the launch of The Adventures of Grandmasaurus at the Aquarium Rescue Center. This is the second Grandmasaurus book in the Grandmasaurus series. Yes, we're both showing our Grandmasaurus pride. If you have any questions for us, hi Paul, I see you. Go ahead and put it in the comment area below, and we will try to have a short Q&A afterwards. We're going to run about 30 minutes. And and before I forget, the Adventures of Grandmasaurus and the original Adventures of Grandmasaurus books are officially available for purchase everywhere October 7th, but you can still pre-order them now. We are doing this book launch a little bit before the October 7th official launch because our friend Shannon here has another book coming out on October 7th, and we didn't want to pile them on together. So that is the Math Kids, remind me, Shannon, which is?
Math Kids 5.
Up there, yes.
An incorrect solution.
Right. And that is going to also be available October 7th. And we are also going to be doing a Facebook Live with Shannon and the author, David Cole. And that is going to be October.
Oh, gosh. I should know
in
that.
2 weeks. It's in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
It is. It is.
3rd?
It's a Sunday. It's a 1 o'clock. We will let everybody know when that's coming up. Hi, Lana. We see you. Thank you for coming. So Shannon and I, we were just talking. We're like, we should probably do a little bit of a read of this. Shannon, do you want to do the first couple of pages, and then we will jump into some questions?
Absolutely. All right. Are you ready? I'm going to put on my
teacher voice. I'll show up the pictures. You do the reading, and then that way,
that's a great idea.
We can hide me.
All right, so this is The Adventures of Grandmasaurus at the Aquarium Rescue Center by Caroline Fernandez and illustrated by Shannon O'Toole. Ms. Priya called the class to attention. Listen here, my leaders of tomorrow. The Aquarium Rescue Center is different from any other aquarium or zoo you've ever seen. When marine animals get sick or injured, they are brought here, where marine biologists observe and take care of them until they're ready to return to the wild. Please, Grandma, Mooney whispered. No funny business this time. You wouldn't with Miss Priya here, would you? I asked. Remember, our teacher continued, just like the experts here, we're going to observe and learn about the animals. Please keep that in mind while you fill out your field trip reports. Observe and learn. Just then, a blue sparkle of aquarium dust soared up Grandma's nose. Dust plus sneezing equals Grandma's funny business. Achoo! Grandma was gone. Splash. Are you kidding me? How are we supposed to do our reports when Grandma's up to her funny business? I grumbled. Not again, Mooney moaned. Follow me, Miss Priya said. This place is magical. But then we noticed Grandma. Dun, dun, dun.
We'll just do this final transition where Grandma turns into a dinosaur.
Do you want me to read this one?
Sure, let's do this one.
Miss Priya, could dinosaurs swim? Mooney asked. Good question. Why don't you look that up? Miss Priya suggested, handing Mooney her tablet. Dinosaurs never lived in the ocean, Mooney read. However, there were many ocean creatures that lived at the same time as dinosaurs. What kind of creature is she? I whispered to Mooney. Flippers, round body, huge. Mooney researched on the tablet. Looks like she's a Shawneesaurus. Looks like Grandmasaurus to me, I moaned.
And then as you go through, Grandma keeps sneezing and keeps turning into different marine creatures. And in this book, since this is Science Literacy Week, we're going to talk a little bit more about the science of the Grandmasaurus series. this book is different from the green Grandmasaurus book, because in here we have Grandma turning into different dinosaurs, whereas in the blue book, when they visit the Aquarium Rescue Center, Grandma is turning into different Mesozoic era marine creatures. And I thought it was really cool because there's so many like underwater creatures that lived during the Mesozoic time that we really feature those wonderful creatures. And so I start my research by, I have a dinosaur encyclopedia book, and I look through that book and look at the different creatures that are in during that time period and which were the water creatures. And then I found it really easy to, when I was describing the creatures, to put it in like a Shawneosaurus and type and read out, because that was the way that I was reading it. And I envisioned that would be the way that a reader, because some of these names are really difficult to read. And so I thought, and I thought, okay, if we put them like phonetically, it would be really easier. And I also it was very important to me to give each creature 3 of their true characteristics. So I would have to research who had big claws, the size of them, who had flippers, what they ate, sort of thing, because I thought it was really important not only for the kids to know about the books, but to know facts about the creatures that they were reading. And also to Shannon, I wanted to give her a different variety of creatures to draw. So I tried, even though there were some that were like amazing, all in the same family, I tried to mix it up. So Shannon, how did you go about when you saw my text? Say, okay, how am I going to get these creatures on the page?
Well, that's like the biggest challenge I find with the story, but I think it's what makes it the most fun for me is the research, because, I find I start with the internet, obviously. That's just because I'm looking at it through a visual perspective. So I'm wanting to look at pictures. When I do my research, I scroll right down to, what did they think it looked like? And a lot of the times too, we don't have that much information as to exactly what it looked like. We might have just pieces of evidence. And so there's a theory of, this is how big we thought it looked. But I have a lot of fun and freedom with the color and the texture of the creatures, which I feel like that's a big part of my research. And then I just collect as many source images as possible and try to compile what I think it would look like based on that research. And you give me like a great variety. I was actually thinking about that because especially for a page like the spread or our chase scene that we always call it, Grandma's turning into like 5 different creatures all on one page. So having that variety so that it's not sort of the same looking, even though it's a really cool looking creature, having her kind of jump between something small and more like familiar looking, like looks more like a reptile, to something enormous with this long neck, I think adds to that like visual variety, which makes it really cool. And I think like with the research too, the size is a big part. Like when I'm doing research, because I always try to look up it might give me a measurement, but what does it actually look like next to an 8-year-old child? And like how massive is it compared to them? So I think that's a big part of like my research once I see the manuscript from you. But it's great. I think all the details you give and the describing the features of the dinosaur, it helps me a lot too, where I start my research too, right?
Yeah. I think it's really important to show the difference. Like we have the story of Mooney, our 2 characters, Mooney and our narrator. Mooney and our narrator and Grandmasaurus. And so there is the story of they're on the field trip. The narrator certainly is a stressed out kid, very worried about, are we going to, why is Grandma doing her funny business? But maybe it's the nerd in me. I like the fact that there are facts in the book. Like I like it's not only a story, but there's like science behind it. And it's a challenge to intertwine because you don't want to make it too sciencey so that it stops the story. But I think the facts are what kids like to know about. Like the dinosaur lover will keep coming back to this book because of the facts.
And I think that the teacher in me naturally, when I'm reading through this, it has awesome like jumping off points for inquiry, for more research. So like for grade 2, for example, you're learning about animals. In grade 6, you learn about biodiversity, right? And at least the Ontario curriculum. So when you're reading through it, like at that, at any point where they're talking about overfishing, or when grandma hits the coral reef and they're like, well, don't do that. They're living creatures. Like, this is a great spot to, if you're a teacher, like stop and say, okay, well, is that true? Like, let's do some research on that. So yeah, you have that information, but it doesn't stop the narrative. Like, you could read through it as a story, and then you could stop and have those like awesome inquiry points where you branch off and have that discussion, which is, as a teacher, I'm like, yes.
Yeah, exactly. And I thought I when I was thinking of it being an aquarium rescue center, I had watched a documentary on, I think, dolphins, and it was a catch and release, a heal and release center. And I thought that's really important, because I'm not a huge fan of aquariums, but kids can connect with what an aquarium is, like, it, tanked animals sort of thing. But it was really important to me that on the first page we say this is a rescue and release center, to know that these animals are going someplace, that they're being healed. And I thought also, by doing that, it would be naturally important to put in the stuff about, coral reefs and about plastic pollution and things that are, impacting today's ocean creatures, because though these animals are extinct, a lot of their ancestors today are still dealing with these problems. And we talk about, like, we connect it back to whichever animal it was. And yes, they are related to crocodiles of today. And this is what crocodiles are facing. And I thought that was an important thing to connect into the story as well. Yeah. I will say you did an amazing job, Shannon. Like, some of these, like, you would think we're in one destination, but you have included so many different factors. And one of the things I wanted was an outside thing, because I didn't want it to be indoors all the time, because I thought for an illustrator that really puts you in a corner. How did you feel about having it in one destination, whereas Grandmasaurus, the destination wasn't so locked down?
I think this story definitely posed like a few challenges for me, just because there's, like, I'm trying to imagine a space that I might not have actually seen before. But I loved that they go outside at some point. So for me, really, the challenge was just making sure that it still looked like it would have been a part of the Aquarium Rescue Center. So how can I make that not just look like the rescue center is just by the beach, but how can I make it look like it's a part of the educational tour for the kids? So just simple things like having signage, for some reason, helped me to kind of ground the space as like an educational tour for the kids. And yeah, the outdoor space actually was probably one of my favorite parts to illustrate, because it also has a nice contrast from the indoor aquarium scenes that are often quite dark. Like, if you think about your experiences in a rescue center or an aquarium, a lot of the lighting is coming from the tanks, right? So that really skews how I'm painting the kids, making sure that they're not like in shadow at all times. So it was a really nice bright contrast, and I liked that we sort of moved outdoors. And just since we're on the topic of like the physical space, the shark tunnel part of the
I'm exactly on that page. I'm exactly on that page.
That was like my biggest challenge illustrating this, because I've been to different aquariums, and I've been to like aquarium rescue centers too, and I have my own personal photos that I can use as a reference. So the inside of the shark tunnel was something that I could try to capture and use references. But like, to actually, I'm sorry, I'm really mirrored here, so I'm going back.
I know, it's hard.
To do to capture the megalodon, but from in the tunnel, that was a challenge. Like, I found myself doing multiple thumbnails and sketches, thinking like, how can we show the megalodon from inside the tunnel with the glass and everything? So then trying to look at it from outside the tunnel, so basically the reader's like in the water, that is very challenging. Or I found it challenging because there was very little source material, like not a lot of photographs from in the tank looking at the tunnel. So I was like, what would that look like? And how would we, but it was fun. Like I found the setting of a aquarium rescue center, although it was, like you said, like contained to one sort of space, there's so much you can do with it. Like there's so many wonderful, and especially being a rescue center, it's not just tank after tank, right? There's something, there's more to it. So it was a lot of fun. I really liked the challenge, actually.
Yeah, total offside. I'll go back to, I also applaud you for the diversity of the kids in the class, because that was one of the things that you and I always talked about, is that we wanted kids to be able to see themselves somewhere in the book. And I think that I applaud you for your diversity drawings, because they are excellent.
Oh, thank you. And, I think too, I think I've mentioned this in like other launches, but, I have a class, like I teach and I work in schools. And so making sure that, the class looks like an actual class is important. And it does reflect all the different types of learners and students in your room, I think is important. And Absolutely. You always give me that feedback too. And you make a point of making sure that that's in the notes. And I think that's awesome, because you should be looking out for the characters in your story, right?
Absolutely. We always put that in the notes. And I don't know if it, here's a fast fact that I don't know if everybody knows. Our main characters of Mooney and the narrator are intended to be non-binary. And that was one of the things that I wrote. And it doesn't jump out at you. But again, I wanted anybody to be able to say, this is me and my friend. And it could be a boy, it could be a girl, it could be a they, like however the reader, because I wanted the reader to really be able to jump into the story and just suspend their disbelief and say, hey, yeah, Grandma sneezes and she turns into different characters. And should be for the reason, we've had like some reviews saying, well, but why does she turn into different characters? And, how does this magic sneeze happen? And I'm kind of like, you know what? Kids would just go with it and say Grandma sneezes into different characters. Because I really think that, it's an intergenerational story as well. Whereas, Grandma goes on field trips and she's active, and maybe the kids are imagining that Grandma's turning into different dinosaurs, or maybe she really does. Like, it's up to the reader.
And I think that's good. I think you have to leave it open like that, because kids like having those questions and talking about it after, right? Whether or not it's true. And I think we talked about that last time too, right? It was a similar question of, we noticed that, or when we did the first one, no side character or no background character notices Grandma, except for babies. So like there are people who are noticing Grandma, but just a baby. And there's a baby in this one. I don't know if you noticed that there's a baby who notices Grandma in this story too.
Oh, I didn't know. I do know that I did catch your dog being in there. Isn't your dog in this one?
Yeah, I put Edgar. My old dog Edgar is in all my illustrations and all my books.
I love that. That's a great Easter egg.
I hide it.
What was the most fun thing for you to draw in this book? Sorry. That's a tough
one. No. I really enjoy actually drawing the side characters, like the background characters. I feel like because there's not a specific, I can kind of do whatever sort of people in the background that I want. And so I like we've talked about, I like putting in little Easter eggs. So some of them are modeled after like a family member or a friend of mine, and I'll draw them in as the background. And so I think there's like a personal connection to it that I enjoy. And I like having little mini stories. So having the baby who notices that Grandma's a dinosaur, and it's very small, and maybe most people aren't going to notice it, but I know it's there and it makes me laugh. So I think that's probably like my favorite thing to draw. And I think the megalodon, that tunnel, was also my favorite. It was really challenging. It took me probably one of the longest to figure out how I want it to look, but I thought it was so much fun. Like I really liked the challenge.
The megalodon, I think, was my only, this has to be in this book, because my son, who's now 10, he's like the inspiration. He tells me he's like the expert consultant on this book, and he actually wants like byline somewhere in it, because he's like, I told you all the stuff to go in it. But Megalodon was like one of his favorites. And I'll show you. I honestly laughed out loud when I saw the illustration of Grandma having the wet footsteps following her. When I saw that on that you'd put that on the last page, I was like, and that the kids, and that the kids are noticing that she's got all the wet footprints and the like the cleaning ladies like, where are these footprints? That was hilarious. It's just so smart, so smart.
You know, I think I have to give credit. I think that was my mom. My mom gave me the idea. Yeah, because I was illustrating it and she was like, like at the end of a movie, like that kind of wink where like the main character makes a little joke at the end. She was like, why don't you have like a trail, like a wet trail behind her? And I was like, oh my God, that's so smart.
So smart.
So thanks, Mom, if you're watching. Thanks.
So smart. And we switched this one to the kids getting some technology in them, that they borrow Miss Priya's tablet in order to do all the researching. Whereas in the Grandmasaurus book, they were looking at study pages.
Yeah.
And as a teacher, how do you feel about that? Like, the use of technology, or do you prefer the old school of the study pages?
I think I like the tech because that is something that we use a lot in classes now. And I think it's something that we're constantly encouraging too, because it is, I think too, it relates more to the kids in their personal lives too, because a lot of kids are kind of using tech at home. And if they have a question or they're researching something, like 9 times out of 10, they're probably looking it up on Google rather than in a book that they have at home. Like you have an encyclopedia, a dinosaur encyclopedia, but I'd say most kids are probably looking up dino facts if they're curious. So I think it's a great, like, more related, I'd say, probably to those younger kids who do have an iPad and are, their curiosity is usually through Googling it through an iPad. So I think that's definitely a great connection. I like that.
Yeah.
I was also going to say, why did you decide to incorporate a teacher, like include Miss Priya this time around? Because I think it provides that like extra layer of anxiety for the kids, because now there is an adult checking in on them throughout. But is there a particular reason why now the teacher is a part of the story?
You know what? Funnily enough, that was feedback I got from our publisher at Commandeer Press, where she's like, I think we should have a teacher in there. And at first I had a bit of a challenge because I thought, well, but, how do I add in, like, she's kind of a main character, but she's like a side character at the same point, and interacting with the kids and how, and we've gone, I think, from 36 pages in this one to 40 pages in this one. So I had a bit of, challenge. There was a challenge in where does Ms. Priya come in the story elements, and will this move the story along or will it block it? But I think the fact that she's checking on the kids, it does add more stress to them. And our main character being the anxious kid, it certainly puts the pressure on, I think, in that way. And I think Miss Priya will continue. She's gonna always be with the kids now because I think she's a very important figure in it. And for those of you who don't know, Grandmasaurus is now a series, and we are working on Grandmasaurus 3 right now, Shannon and I, and that is taking place in a supermarket. And we have Miss Priya again leading the kids through the food aisles. And I'm finding that, like, now that Miss Priya is part of the family, so to speak, I'm really liking her because she, she's welcoming to Grandma, but she also, is such the teacher. She keeps the kids on target and kind of herds them in at the same time as letting them explore. And so I think that was great feedback from the publisher saying, hey, add her in.
Yeah, she's a great character. She's got this great Miss Frizzle energy, like she's so passionate.
Exactly. And I love that she has like the name tag and stuff. Like she is instantly recognizable to me. I won't mirror it backwards.
Yeah, it's all mirrored.
She is just like such the teacher. Yeah. And what do you think going forward with these series? What would you like to see? Like, do you think we have? I know. I'm looking forward to the supermarket thing because I have our chase scene
Oh, yeah.
I love the way it kind of the chase scene climaxes in the supermarket book. In this one, it's really good, but the supermarket book might be the best one so far.
I'm excited about the supermarket one because I think the anxiety is a little higher because it's a smaller space and the chances of someone catching grandma it would be much higher because,
Yeah.
an aquarium, she's kind of, hiding in within a tank with other animals or creatures. But, a supermarket, she's got limited spots to hide. So I think that's definitely going to be a lot of fun. And for me to like visualizing how I can draw it, without giving too much away, I'm enjoying being creative with the placement of things so that grandma's hidden from Miss Priya. I'm enjoying that a lot.
I wanted to show in this one, and this was you, Shannon. This wasn't so much me. You did actions consequences where you put it on the kids to hand in their field trip reports, and you see that our main people over here, they're not quite ready yet. And I think just that visual, like any kid will be able to connect with. Oh crap, mine isn't done yet.
Yeah.
And then they hurry up. And once they tell grandma, okay, you got to stay put now. Please just stay put so that we can get this done. Like, I think kids can connect with that and say, okay, the last minute is
doing my homework at lunch.
I am responsible. And there we have grandma finally turning back from the ammonite. And for this particular Mesozoic creature, I had a lot of trouble because I went down a wormhole of learning far too much about ammonites.
Oh.
And I was like, you know what? I can't put all this in. Like I went into the Egyptians and Egyptian gods and what
Really?
the swirly part. Oh, where is it? Over here. The swirly part of the shell, what that was about, and went into ram's horns, and I went down this huge wormhole, and I had to bring myself back, saying, "Stop, Caroline! Like this is not going to fit on this very busy page."
So, was that your favorite part of your research process? Was the ammonite?
All of them are I love research, and so all of them I get far too much into the research, and that is a not my strength, because I don't just read and then okay, now I'm going to write it. I read everything, and then I get way too excited about it. And the supermarket book, honestly, I think that one I've had more drafts on than either of these two books, because I was wormholing the heck out of that book. And I was going in, okay, it's on food and nutrition, so I need to talk about the nutrition guide, and I went totally off. Whereas this one, I was able to, okay, plastic pollution, it made sense to me.
Yeah.
And talking about animals and conservation, and it was a pleasure to research, a pleasure to write. I really, really enjoyed this. And I think it's a good follow-up from this one to this one. You can read them independently, or you can read them in series too.
I was thinking that actually, yeah, if you were reading out of order, it still makes a lot of sense, and it's still a lot of fun without knowing the backstory. Because like you said before, right, we don't need to know why grandma does this. And so it's each isolated story is a fun, creative adventure, right, for those kids.
And I think this is for the pre-reader fans of Miss Frizzle and the Magic School Bus. If you as an adult you've enjoyed those stories and you want to get your kids to the Magic School Bus, these are the books to start them off with.
Yeah.
To go on those types of adventures, because you really are going off and enjoying the ride with the narrator. We're getting to the end of our 30-minute launch. Shannon and I were talking about this earlier, saying it's still strange to do a pandemic launch.
Yeah.
Because for Stop Reading This Book, we had a real in-bookstore launch. And then we had Adventures of Grandmasaurus last year was our first pandemic launch. This is our second pandemic launch now. and it feels strange. So, guys, if you are watching this and you want to support Shannon or I or Commandeer Press, please spread the word about the books. We really appreciate it because people they're going into bookstores, but not quite as much as they did pre-pandemic. And the only way to learn about new books is to recommend and tell a friend and share on social media. So if you wouldn't mind giving us a shout out, that would be a-okay with us, right?
Yeah. And hopefully for the third Grandmasaurus, we get to do this in person.
Yes, we will hope about that. And there will be a fourth Grandmasaurus after that. So guys, we are on the dinosaur train, so to speak. Like we are going. So follow along our journey. If anybody has any questions, please pop them in the comment box now or at any time. And Shannon and I will pop into the Facebook page. This is going up to the Commandeer Press YouTube page as well. So you can, if you only saw half of it and you're like, wonder what happened in the first half, you can pop back and look at the whole thing again. And to let you know, the Adventures of Grandmasaurus at the Aquarium Rescue Center, officially out in bookstores everywhere. October 7th. Shop wherever you buy books. Ask for it if they don't have it in store, or support your local community independent bookseller because they need love. Yeah. And we highly support them as well. And you can also get the original Grandmasaurus that Shannon has there. Stop reading this book is the red book to the right, which is also by us. We've got some links in there. It's a good book to read as well. And Shannon, any closing thoughts on your side?
I think I definitely feel the same sentiment you have. I think in person would have been nice to share and react and work with or read it to kids live. But I'm still super happy to be a part of the Grandmasaurus story, and I can't wait for the next two. And share it and buy it for kids for Christmas and let everyone know about how great Grandmasaurus is.
That's right. Exact Christmas, birthday gifts, like right here. This is your go-to. Also, library holds, because I don't know if you guys know, you can borrow these books at the library. At least, definitely Toronto Public Library has copies, and I know other libraries also will have copies. And if anybody wants to buy a book and give it to somebody for the holidays, please reach out to me. I'm happy to sign a book plate and mail it to you. And I could probably talk Shannon into doing the same. Yeah. And and you guys can start a collection of Grandmasaurus books for anyone. Okay, so thank you very much, Shannon, for spending your Sunday with me talking about our book. This is very exciting. And also, please, guys, come back in 2 weeks' time. 2 weeks Sunday, we are going to be celebrating Shannon once again for Math Kids. An inconvenient solution. Which one?
An incorrect solution.
Incorrect solution. I should know this. They're all like popping in my head. And that is Math Kids 5. It will be with David Cole, who is the author, who will be joining us, and Shannon, the most amazing illustrator on the planet.
Thank you. I'm flattered. Yeah. Thanks so much.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, have a good rest of the day and go out and support Canadian literature. Kidlit and everything Canadian.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.